Today we have with us Judy Allen Dodson. We also have Gloria Kelly, we have Jessica Buck, and we have Alan Bailey. I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves in a minute, but I want to give you some troubleshooting tips in case there are some issues throughout the webinar. If for whatever reason you notice that your mics aren't working, you can close out the Zoom and you can log back in a different browser. If you're still experiencing issues, there's a drop-down arrow right beside your mic that you can test the sound. We ask that you keep your audio and your video off while we are going through the webinar today. If you have any questions, please place those questions in chat and we'll try to answer those questions as they come through. So without further ado, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. Judy, would you like to start first? Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm on mute. Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Judy Allen Dodson, and I am the librarian as well as the archivist with Wake County Public Libraries. I work at the Olivia Raney Local History Library. And fun fact about me is that I'm also a children's book author, and I just published my first book. So that's a fun fact about me.
Awesome. Gloria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gloria Kelly. I'm Dean of Library Services at Central Piedmont Community College in Charlotte.
Jessica?
Make sure I'm unmuted.
You are.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Jessica Buck. I am an adult services librarian at the Escondido Public Library. That's in San Diego County in California. So I'm visiting you all from another state. And I guess fun fact would be that I really enjoy reading romance novels.
Awesome, awesome. And last, you, Alan.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Bailey. I'm professor and head of the Teaching Resources Center at Joyner Library on the campus of East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. Two fun facts. I have played basketball with Michael Jordan, and I was also in a movie with Whoopi Goldberg.
Wow, wow. That is pretty cool. Well, I'm going to introduce myself. Again, I am Brittany Champion, but I am from Pitt Community College, and I am the Instruction and Outreach Librarian, and I will be your moderator for today. And a fun fact about me is that I am a lover of plants all of a sudden. Now that we have been shut in, I started with 2 plants in March. I now have over 20. So yes, I am a plant mom now. So that's a fun fact about me. But we're gonna jump into this webinar and get started because we have 60 minutes of goodness, okay? So all things author talks. I'm gonna ask some questions and I'm just gonna let the panelists answer freely and you guys answer in any order that you please, okay? So for library demographics, what is the size of your community that your library serves?
I can start.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I didn't mention, but Wake County Public Libraries is in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Wake County is one of the bigger or the largest county in North Carolina. And we serve over 1 million residents within Wake County.
For Charlotte and Central Piedmont, we serve about 60,000 students in the area. We have 6 campuses and 2 sites. And we serve the entire Charlotte region, but mostly for the students that come here, we have a 60,000 head count, less than 30 are under the age of 30. And so we serve a diverse group. We have a middle college on 4 of the campuses. So we're serving high school students as well as those returning back from retirement.
My situation is a little unique because I'm here on a college campus. I usually have authors in for an event that we have. It's called the Librarian to Librarian Networking Summit. It's an annual event that's a professional development opportunity for school librarians and other school library personnel. So with that, we open it up to librarians throughout the state because we realize that there's not a whole lot of professional development for school librarians, but also we also do something for our College of Education student, faculty, and staff, and we have about 3,000 students in that program. We try to work with K-12 educators when we do this. We open it up to the general public by cooperating with the public library for this event. And we do try to work with community organizations that work with children because we usually bring in children's authors and illustrators.
I guess I can go next. The Escondido Public Library, we are the only library in Escondido. And I think the last census had our population at a little over 150,000. It's probably more by now. We get a lot of people visiting too. So yeah, it's a lot for I call it the little village library because we're little, but we have a very big community that we serve.
Awesome, awesome. And with these unique numbers in the communities that you serve, how have you included author talks in your budget?
Yes, I'll start. I could ask the question, what budget, but I won't. But what I could do is do creative financing. I really don't have a budget line for programming and author talks. What I try to do is incorporate them with existing programs, usually doing Black History Month, Women's History Month, and we do a festival called Sensoria. Those are the times that I bring authors in and speak in. So I coordinate with the areas on campus that have funding. So for student life, student affairs, that's one of my major supporters in that area. The festival has funds, so I request funds through that, as well as our foundation. So I request funding. So that's my creative way of finding funds. I can always bring a speaker if I can find the funds. There's always someone on my list that I'm interested in bringing. We also work with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library in bringing speakers in. One thing that CPC has with what we do is that we have the space to house events. And so if we're working with outside agencies that do not have space, that is what we can bring to the table. And that's what I can bring to the table without actually shelving out the actual dollars. So I can provide the space for authors. So that is the way that I play the game in the area of budgeting. I use everybody else's money, but I can find you a speaker if you're wanting to work with me.
Yeah, same with Gloria. We don't have a program budget. All of our funding comes from our Friends group. It's a nonprofit that raises money for us, and they are so supportive. And all of the money that I can possibly get comes from them. And so far, in the past, we've had a few in-person author talks. It hasn't been a consistent part of our programming, but because of COVID, we started having the virtual author talks, and now that's become just a staple in our programming. And I'm working on it also becoming something that we hopefully will be able to get funding for in the future.
For our program, when we first started, probably back in 2006, I do believe it was, money was pretty good in the library. So we had a $2,000 budget for the program every year, but we all know what has happened to budgets as the years went on. So after that, to use Gloria's term, we had to do some creative budgeting after that because we had to look at different ways. Some of the things we did get sponsors. Some of them could be book companies. One was people who actually sell library furniture, just different people who would serve as sponsors for our event. We do have a small registration fee that we charge our participants. So a bit of that registration fee did help with that. I have applied for a couple of grants. I have not been successful for the grants because of the type of organization we are. A lot of the grants, they want you to either be like a school or a public library, but because we're an academic library, they just really didn't work with us, but some of those grants would work well for the public librarians and school librarians who are listening. And we also were fortunate from time to time, we have gifts and donations from just people who liked the program and who heard good things about the program and wanted to see it succeed.
Well, with Wake County Public Libraries, we do apply for a lot of grants, like Alan had mentioned, that they do, a lot of them are grants are for school and public libraries. And so we have been very fortunate that we do, when we do apply, we do get a majority of the grants that we apply for. It may not be, you know, all of it, you know, it depends on how much we're asking for. Sometimes it's all of it. Sometimes it's like a partial, but we do collaborate with many in the community as well. And so I think the collaboration with different outside organizations also help bring in funding for our programs as well. And we are so happy to be able to have the money to be able to pay our participants and our speakers and our panelists, because I do feel like if anyone is giving, well, Wake County feels like if anyone is giving of their time, then they should be accommodated for that, whether it be hotel or, you know, some type of an honorarium to be able to pay for their services.
That's great. It's great to hear that you all have such great support outside of the library, whether that comes from grants or other associations, organizations outside of the library. So that's always good to help. For those who are new and new at virtual programming or author talks, and they're interested in hosting one, what fee should they expect to have to cover outside of maybe hotel, travel? Are there any other unexpected fees that they should look out for?
Good question. Well, a lot of people, well, I know, like, for example, like I did have a speaker before COVID come in, but this was, and you may want to take, you know, this tip as well. You know, they may have, and a printing budget. They may have handouts, for example, and this is pre-COVID. So, you know, just take that into consideration. I had a speaker who came and he had like 15 handouts, and I'm like, ah! So, you know, just think about, you know, we didn't have to, you know, we had the resources here, but, you know, they may, you know, put that in their honorarium that they, you know, may, you know, charge a certain amount, but they may increase it just based off of some of the resources that they may need to bring to the library for their presentation. Mm-hmm.
I think it also depends upon how well known a person is, what is included in the fee. If you're working with an agency that's handling all of the finances, then they will charge you for pretty much everything that covers their visit, whether it's travel, and this is kind of pre-COVID, whether they're traveling on the plane, whether they're driving, per diem, food. Sometimes people travel with other people, so they include that into their cost if they're having a companion. If they're selling books, then are the books being shipped to you, or are they doing something else, or whether your bookstore is handling it as we do on campus, have our bookstore handle the selling of books. So I think you just have to be clear in whatever the contract is with the presenter or writer. I try to deal with local authors a lot because there are, within the Charlotte area, there are writers groups and writing and authors, and people are self-publishing. So we've worked with students. I've had students present as writers. You know, they're trying to write. Everybody writes their own story, have their own narratives to share. So I try to encourage them as well, be a part. We've had faculty that present on their work, whether they're doing research in a particular area. So I think it just depends. I've had people come for zero amounts. I use really connections, being able to collaborate with people. When I meet you at something, I always get your card, and so I always follow back up. So I try to build networks that way. And so the college works in a way that people have to register through the North Carolina system if I'm paying them that way. So sometimes the college put a lot of parameters in that eliminate some people from actually presenting at the school because of the hoops that you have to jump through to actually get paid. So sometimes I can do non-gift cards, things like that for a presenter that's local. So I think you just have to work with the author and just make sure that everything that you think you would want to be paid for when you go someplace, that's actually covered in the contract that you're dealing with.
I know several times with me, I've had to deal with the conflicts of the author or illustrator's agent and some of our university guidelines. Like for instance, there was one author I wanted to get here. She was agreeing to get here, but going through her agent and doing what she wanted to do was just completely different because of their guidelines. One particular thing, they wanted to fly her in first class, and that was a stipulation. Well, our university will not reimburse anyone for first class flights. You have to pay for that extra. So we couldn't work some of those details out. Another thing, they wanted like a percentage of the fee ahead of time. Our university, we cannot cut a check to the person until after the service has been rendered. So you might run into some of those roadblocks, but we've had North Carolina authors, national as well as international, but most of the times it has gone pretty smoothly. But one thing I would say, I have learned that people love eating at local places. If you take them to a local restaurant, they will talk about that forever. I have one author who's still talking about when I took him to have shrimp and grits, which was his first time. And we had another author who was from Mexico who got excited because he had heard about Eastern North Carolina barbecue, but he had never tasted it. And that was a real cheap dinner, but it made him so happy. It was the first time he'd ever had hush puppies as well. So, you know, just little things like that can really make your authors excited.
So, Alan, can I ask a question? So is that part of your budget as well? I mean, like, how do you pay for, you know, wining and dining a presenter?
What we do with that, it all depends. Sometimes if it's something real small, sometimes I will cover it, but it is part of their budget. But here's another time with networking. Most of the time when we have an author, we have one of our sponsors who they like to take the author out. And so they will come out and they pay for it. They pick up our check, everyone's check for that evening. So once again, it comes with a little bit of networking, but yes, a lot of times it's included in their budget because their contract will say that you do supply X number of meals for them.
Okay.
I'll just share my experiences with fees because all of the talks I've done so far have been virtual. And depending on how you first get in contact with the author, if you immediately go through the publicist or you contact the author through their website, and depending if they're well-known or if they're a newer author, they might already have like a set fees, like this is how much for in-person, this is how much for virtual. Or it might be that they don't want anything, or you can just offer them a certain amount. So it's really just kind of getting a feel for what they expect and making sure that that's clear. All of the authors I've had, none of them have wanted anything, but I like being able to like say thank you for their time. So part of the budget that I requested was to send them little thank you e-gift cards, just thank you for your time and for like chatting with us. And they've really appreciated that. So I would say as much as you can, even if there aren't any expectations, appreciation in some form goes a long way, and it'll also help future relationships if the authors want to come back, because they will remember that appreciation.
Hey, Brittany, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I mean, just because, you know, I have a lot of questions about this because, I mean, I do a lot of programming, but I guess, you know, when you're doing programming and you're looking at your budget, do you have, by chance, do you count people out because of their, they cost too much, and do you have like a plan B or plan, C, people that you go to based off of your budget? Anybody can answer. Gloria, you're on mute.
I never count anybody out. I'm one that's optimistic about, I can get the money. And sometimes it doesn't work that way, but I usually start off trying to figure out, okay, how much will it cost? And I also learned a long time ago that people that cost $20,000, $30,000 or even $100,000 has a mechanism to lower that cost. And I realized from another vendor that, or an agent, that they give so many smaller amount visits to institutions as some kind of, I guess, a feel-good point where they will give a break. So I always ask for that break when I start. And some people will look at the size of Central Piedmont and consider they have money to bring me. They're looking to say, okay, that school should have the money to bring me, but I'm in an area where I'm not generating revenue. I'm not creating revenue. So I don't have a budget that I can just bring in. So that's when I start reaching out to foundations, reaching out to other areas within the college that I know have funds from student fees that can help bring an author based upon the subject matter. So I'm looking at what can that subject matter, is it an English literature? Can I go there? Is it a psychology? Is it a sociology title? Is it a STEMS related topic? So I'm looking at those areas, and those areas have funding that they can use for student engagement. And so I'm looking to engage other people as well. And then I'm also looking around in the community to see who in that community would also be interested in that author. The public library brought Angie, The Hate You Give. And so Central Piedmont help with the actual hosting of the person. We provided the venue for the community. I've had John Lewis come, and that was really, I think I had him twice here in the city, and each time it's not a fee for them to come. He didn't charge to come. I paid for his travel. He did not request first class. He said, I can ride on any seat. And so he came that way, and in return, he had funding. He has a organization that he gives back to. So we gave to that. And so I think there are ways when you have the one-on-one conversation with the writer or speaker, you can work better than going through an agent. I find that works better. And I've worked with an agent, and we've gone back and forth trying to negotiate what would look good or what could really work for us. And I had to say, that is really out of my budget. And so try to figure out what works best. But, I don't mind asking. I'll ask. All you can say is yes or no. Right. And then the financing may be a problem, but I'm always willing to work with people to ask for money. I think I'm known as the asking person on campus. I'm always asking.
Thank you. That was good. I've never had to, I do the same thing as well with people who seem a little bit out of our budget. Like we'll just say, well, first I go in saying, well, I have this amount of money. And they can either, say, well, I would like this, or could I have other things to be able to help out, to be able to cushion that a little bit. And also what we do too, just like you said, Gloria, is we find other people, other organizations in the community that they may be able to have an author visit with, or that may be able to help with the budget. Because see, if we can only afford this much and another entity could be able to afford so much, then combining that or having them go to other visits within the community, that helps all of us, because we get this great, amazing person for our community, and they get to see a lot of different people in the community at different events.
I think it's also good. There are authors that, they're promoting their book, so they are in your area. And I've found that if they're in Wake and then they're moving south to Charlotte and then they're moving to Atlanta, that sometimes that affects their fee as well. that they will negotiate because they're making money as they move around the country. It may not be what they initially wanted, but they will work with you to get what you need there in that capacity. So I think that's also good to work with and watch their schedule to see when they will be in your area of the country.
That's a good point.
And Gloria, one thing to kind of piggyback on something you said, giving them incentives. I know, especially when you get them, if they're having a new book that's coming out, and especially if you allow enough time for book signings and you actually publicize their book signings, a lot of times that will encourage them to come because they're really trying to launch that new title. But something else too, try to get to know these people and build a rapport with authors and illustrators. You can do that through, you know, your state, national conferences, and just having a chance to meet them, volunteer with your state organizations to do so. Like one particular illustrator I wanted to come, I had met this individual at the North Carolina School Media Association conference. And when I went through his website, I had to go through his agent, and his agent was just, we couldn't afford it. We tried to negotiate, we couldn't afford it. Well, because I had made that contact with him, I sent him an email and just said, I really wanted to, but we can't. His agent called me the next day and said, oh, he told me to tell you whatever Alan Bailey wants, do it for Alan Bailey because he wants to do this for you. So just give him what you can. And I always try to pay them as much as we can to let them know that we appreciate the work that they do and all that they are contributing. But yes, sometimes people are just a little bit out of the budget, but we do what we can. And like Gloria, I'll ask you that you have not because you ask not. So I'll make sure I ask.
I would like to add something if I could. I have found that when we are posting to social media, when we do our book displays and you tag the authors, some authors, depending on the captions, they'll go back and they'll like your post and they may even repost it in their stories. And so once you build that connection with them through social media, that might be a way to kind of help get some authors come and speak or do virtual programming as well.
Yes, a lot of the authors that I've been able to get come for our virtual talks, I either met at book signings locally or through Twitter. I am on Twitter probably way too much, and I follow all of them, and I'm always chatting with them on Twitter. So those first relationships that I built, I've gone back to them saying, oh, I'm looking for these kind of authors. Do you have any recommendations? And then they'll recommend authors to me. So when I email those authors, they'll be like, oh, Suzanne told me to contact you. And then it's like an immediate in. So yeah, social media is powerful.
I'm gonna jump right into outreach and assessment. How often do you all work with local authors? I've heard some of you say that, you know, you work with authors that you've met in your hometown, some that you've met on social media, but how often is it that you work with them? And how has that work increased your circulation from those authors?
I use a lot of local authors. Like I said, again, my budget is limited. I look at faculty members, I look at staff. Everybody is a writer, and everybody now has started to write. They're writing their stories, they're writing their narratives, they're writing the things that they want to read. So they're writing that, and we even have writing groups, you know, there are local groups in the community. And so when they offer writing groups, I meet people that way. When we have festivals, people will give me their cards to say, I'm interested in participating in this. We have an author showcase that we do yearly through the Sensoria. So we highlight an author that way. And so we've had authors say, okay, how do you get to be a part of this? And there's no rhyme or reason. We just invite, and whoever can come, comes. Sometimes we have themes, sometimes we don't. for Black History Month, Women's History Month, whatever the national theme is, I try to find people that are doing research in that particular area and try to invite faculty members from area colleges in the area. I invite local politicians, whatever is necessary and whatever is going on at that point, I invite them that way. So local authors is a good thing. And I saw also, when I think of Central Piedmont, because we're a community college, we're trying to engage students. So to bring someone that's local to them, that they can reach out to and see within the city, adds another avenue of feeling like I can do that also. I can be that next author. I can do the same thing that they can do. So they develop relationships with them and help out in that way. So I look to local authors.
Yes, I agree. At Escondido, we love our local authors. We have a local author collection. We have our writers group, and we've had a few local author talks, specifically from people who have joined the writers group. COVID kind of put a pause on that, but we're working on for next year trying to do more specific local author talks, having a little local author like book fest so that people can come and just learn all about them. And I'm not entirely sure about how it's impacted the circulation of the books. I'd have to actually look that up. But any opportunity to promote an author, especially a local author, we like, and I know the authors enjoy any publicity that they can get.
And so at Wake County, we have lots of local authors, and that's what we pride ourselves on, because we know that, just like Gloria said, that it's a lot of people who have a story to tell, and some of them may have books and some of them may not. They may not be just authors and illustrators. They're storytellers, they're puppeteers, they're just, it runs the gamut. Some of them are in the community from the universities even, you know, just to be able to do their own, some of them have their own personal research that they do outside of their own, you know, course of study. But we do have local author luncheons, and that was an annual event. And we have the storytelling festival. So we have all types of creative people, including authors and illustrators. But yeah, and so, you know, I know that if you're new in the programming field, you will programming for your library, because a lot of times you may switch over to different quartiles, or, you know, that may have not been your position in the past, but now you're tasked with having to do a program. And it's like, you know, where do you start? How do you start? And I know that first or cold call is, you know, can be kind of intimidating, but, you know, there are a lot of people at your library or within your library system who may have already reached out to that creative person. And so the connection may have already been made, but it can be daunting, because I've been in a situation where we had never used this presenter, didn't know how he presented, and we wanted him for Black History Month. And it was like, oh, can he present? So I think, to me, that's a little bit of some angst that I have too. Like, a lot of times, sometimes the creative person may have a video, but what if they haven't had a video? You don't know if they've ever presented before. Will they present good? Or, I mean, you know, will they do a good job? I mean, you know, so I think, you know, there are lots of questions, but, you know, you can vet people. You can ask a lot of questions to see if they actually know, you know, what they're talking about or not. But we've been very good. Thankful that the presenters that we've vetted here with Wake County have been very good.
Alan, did you want to have anything to add to that?
I really think that kind of covered everything. I can just kind of thumbs up to different things people have said.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question. What platform do you use to host author talks, especially virtual? And if you've used social media, how often do you experience issues with connection?
I can start with this since all I've done is the virtual. We use Zoom, and then it can connect and stream to Facebook Live or YouTube, but we typically use Facebook. I've only had one nightmare where Zoom would not connect to Facebook. And I tried for about 10 minutes, and then eventually I just gave up, and I asked the authors if we could just invite people into the Zoom meeting. So we had this spontaneous, intimate book talk where there were so many squares that we lost track of everyone. But thankfully, the fallback was that we had Zoom and that people could join the meeting, because I don't know what we would have done if Facebook just worked and there was no plan B. So that's the only nightmare that I've had. Thankfully, I survived it.
I will say everything that I have done that's been face-to-face, but I will say that now with COVID-19, I am going to explore some different things and see if we can do more programming, because before that was just a one-time thing. But I'm definitely going to reach out to different authors and illustrators and see if we can do more programming for our students on campus as well as people within our community.
Oh, go ahead.
We have not done a lot of programming since COVID started. Prior to that, because we're on 6 different campuses, we do have a digital media service on campus so that we can stream the talks out to the other campuses. So when we're face-to-face, that's what we do. With COVID, we've done some activities using WebEx and WebEx events through the college, but they were not author series. One was a party night. We had a DJ and played to the students different songs through the time. We've had a concert with people playing. So we are trying out various avenues to see what is the hook for students, because it's hard to determine what they want to hear or see. And so the more activity that you can bring them into, the better it is for us. So we're just kind of testing the waters. Like we have a fake news presentation tomorrow, which is WebEx event. So we're just kind of testing the water, putting our toes in the water just to make sure that students will come. But we're just working that way. So hopefully we will be moving. We are planning for our next event, which would be the author showcase, will be in March or April. So we have contacted a writer and he's local and he's an art collector. So he has a show that will come with his presentation. So we're trying different things. So there will be an on-site as well as probably an online component to his work.
So Gloria, it's very interesting that you say on-site as well as a virtual component, because with Wake County, we've been experimenting with both actually. So we do pre-recorded story times with, so, you know, for the younger set. And we've also had the Zoom calls with the author series. And we've also had the on-site in person with Kwame Mbalia, speaking with one of our adult services librarians. So we at Wake County have run the gamut, you know, just trying to test and see what works, what is safest for our panelists and our librarians and our staff. And so we've been testing a lot of things. And the other thing I know was one of Brittany's questions was, have we, you know, been able to use the library students as well as any of the young adult community volunteers, but we have not been able to open up anything like that for anybody other than the staff, because we're just still at the point where, you know, we're just trying to figure out what's safe and what is, you know, best for everyone at this time during COVID.
And that just reminded me, talking about safety, security for the author chats is something that I didn't think about until I started reading about other people's experiences with Zoom meetings, specifically Zoom bombing. And So that's another reason why we like doing the Zoom just for myself and the authors, and then streaming that to Facebook. That way no one else can come into the Zoom meeting, can interact with them that way. It's just all on Facebook. That way there's a level of security, because I've had a few authors where the publicist didn't realize that the Zoom meeting will be closed, and they've like given me a list of names, like, don't let these people into the Zoom room. And that's just something that you don't think about being in like the virtual realm, because it's so easy to feel safe, I guess. Just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Well, I like the idea of protecting the author, but I think that sometimes with lives, I have found that our patrons, when they log in, if they're having issues with their phone, or they're experiencing audio issues, or they're trying to, I find that sometimes they'll try to request into the video, and they'll, sometimes they'll have questions to say, well, this isn't working, this isn't working. So I find that for me, it's easier to kind of troubleshoot in the beginning, to try and help you as much as I can, and to always remind them that it's going to be recorded and saved to the page. So that's one of the ways that I have kind of worked around that virtual experience, the issues that I've experienced with connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just Dawn wrote a comment about authors' experiences and how that they like the idea to Zoom to Facebook Live. I also, at the beginning of the chats, remind everyone watching that even though we're not physically in the library, our code of conduct still applies. So if there's any inappropriate anything, that comment will get removed, and possibly they'll just be blocked. So the author's comfort is like my #1 priority, because they're being so generous with their time, and like, people shouldn't be jerks.
Yeah. And so someone had just put in a comment about authors and illustrators of color just having to deal with blatant racism. And this is really unfortunate. And I don't know if that was, we're in a new, different, weird age of, virtual now, and people feel more comfortable being able to express their views, whether they're negative or positive, because they're behind a screen. So I really think, just like Jessica said, that you have to be heightened. Your awareness for security has to be heightened. And I feel like we, as opening up the space for the presenters, we have to be vigilant about making sure they are safe and protected. Yeah.
And Brenda just asked a question. So they aren't recorded. So it's not previously recorded and then we post it live. It's a live, it's just as if this meeting that we're all in now, we could connect it to Facebook, and then people on Facebook could watch us live. That's essentially what we're doing with the author chats at my library. That way, anyone that wants to interact with it, they could comment on Facebook, but they wouldn't physically be in the meeting with us. So that's kind of how it works. Of course.
I think there's also another issue with finding speakers and dealing with racism, is that speakers are not as known as others, so you really have to be diligent in finding people to make it be inclusive. So you need to go out and do a real search for someone to present on various topics. So I try to bring in various types of authors, and sometimes, because they're not well known, the funding does not follow the programming. And so I think, as librarians and as supporters of sharing information and making sure that everything is available to everyone, and to equalize the process, we need to make sure that we are open and willing to go to bat for those that are less noticeable and less known than others. Everybody started with their one book, their one author. So we have to remember that they just fell in and got a chance where this one may not have. And so we need to give that author, that writer, a chance to be who they need to be.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
The
I was
debut
gonna,
authors.
go ahead, Jessica.
I was going to say the debut authors, those are the ones that need a lot of support and don't really get, sometimes their publishers will give them a lot of marketing and support, but a lot of the times it's a real struggle. So
Yeah. So I was going to mention that when we do have, I encourage my presenters who don't have books to write a book, write your story. But the ones who do have Wake County Public Libraries, we do make an extra effort to be able to buy their books and to be able to add them to the collection. And if we have, let's say we have 5 copies, we'll add, we'll try to add 10 more depending on the budget or how many ever more, to be able to support that creative person. So so people who may not have the budget, when this is pre-COVID, come to the library, they can check the book out. But now during COVID, if we have them virtually or live, then what we do is we still can buy the book and then they can check it out through Books on the Go. So we still try to definitely support them by buying extra copies of the book, because we know when they come to the library or we have a writer series or an author series or whatever program, that they get noticed, they have the visibility. And so we want to be able to help them and have them come back. See, that's the thing. We want to be able to build that rapport, and we want to be able to have a good relationship with that author or illustrator.
yes, I've used our virtual author chat series as a way to, an added excuse to purchase books by the authors. Because basically, if we have the author on, like, of course we need to have the books in our collection. We're going to buy them, of course. So that's something that, and we're going to buy the books. And of course the books are going to be in the book displays, and we're going to be publicizing that, and it's going to be recommended. So there's just all these different levels of how much support we can give them just by having them involved in our programming.
So the other thing I was going to say is, and this is really good that we can do for social media as well, is, I don't know, COVID, because no one's in the library now, I guess we could, still have book displays, take a picture and then post it on all social media to be able to help that author illustrator and to promote them and to be able to promote our collection as well. So it's like a win-win-win situation.
Okay, so
someone asked the question in the chat, do we do digital book displays?
I do at Pitt Community College.
We do a lot.
Weekly. And we also try to do, we show our ebooks. And so we always provide instructions for students to go in and look at some of our titles. We have Canopy now, so we show our videos to Canopy. And I would say that it has really increase the number of people who are at least checking out those databases. Of course, it's showing us who's logging in or how many people are logging in and actually just kind of browsing, and then those who are checking out and reading or watching our videos.
Yeah, another fun thing that we've been doing with the books, because people can't physically be in the library and see them, is doing like little digital book bingos. So we'll have like the digital book bingo sheet, and it'll have like, oh, read like a historical novel, read a nonfiction. And then weekly we would say, oh, here are some recommendations for this bingo square. I don't know if a lot of people haven't posted it, but people have liked and commented on them. So I'm feeling like, okay, this is a good idea. But one of the things we do is any of the authors that we've had for the chat series, they'll be part of the books that we feature as a recommendation. So there's just so much fun stuff you can do now.
It is.
Hey, Brittany, I think there was a question that was directed at Jessica about removing participants who are disruptive during lives.
Let me pull up the chat because I can't see the chat, but Jessica, please feel free to answer.
So in terms of removing, if it's Facebook, then it's just like deleting the comment and then possibly just blocking them. If it's like a Zoom meeting like this, you can kick people out easily. That's why it's good to have a waiting room so that everyone can just pile in there, and then you can let them in all at once or individually, and you can also send messages to the waiting room.
Heather says that they find it that having a separate moderator to attend to that sort of thing helps a lot, so the presenter doesn't have to deal with that. Yes.
Yeah, I wish. I wish I had a second person.
It does help. Thank you, Marcellus. Thank you for your help today. We're getting close to our ending of our webinar, you guys. If you have more questions, please feel free to put those in the chat.
Do you mind if I just jump in and
Yeah,
throw a question out there?
Okay.
I wanted to ask each one of the authors, what's their most memorable author that came and spoke, and what made that that visit so memorable?
Oh, I have one. And this was just right before COVID. So it's like right on my brain, but he's my go-to presenter, and he hasn't written his book yet. So I'm still working on him. But Joseph Holt Jr., who his family has an interesting legacy. They were the first Black family in Raleigh to initiate school integration. And so he's my go-to because so many people don't know this story. And so he's my most memorable, he's my favorite, and I'm very passionate about telling that story. And I want other people and little kids, and see, this is the thing, not only adults, but when we have family programs, it's very interesting. So the family comes, and so the little kids and the parents learn about this history at the same time. And so he is probably my most memorable and my favorite, and he loves telling his story because he wants his story to be known to everyone in the community. So I'm still working on that book for him too, to get him to write it. I may just have to write the book for him.
Yes, you may.
With him.
With him.
Yeah.
I've had some great experiences, so I feel odd, kind of singling out one, but I am going to go out on this limb and single out one. John Claude Bemis came to speak to us one time, and as I was marketing his visit, I did get an email from a after-school program for children here in town called Building Hope. Well, John Claude Beeman had also written a book called Flora and the Runaway Rooster, and he wrote that for Heifer International, and this group had just studied Heifer International and actually donated, I think they donated chickens to someone in another country. So John Claude Bemis was more than willing to do an extra program to actually go to that after school program. And to write that book, he had gone to Africa and did a lot of research. So he actually did a slideshow of his photographs of when he was there and really got to talk to the children about that experience. So having the children meet the author and something that was so closely related to them, they were elated. And I know that's an experience they will never forget, because I know I won't. Just to see the joy and the enthusiasm with so many hands going up to ask questions, that was just an amazing visit.
If I may add about the Joseph Holt Jr. Story, you know, people are amazed that Joseph Holt, like this wasn't that long ago that integration was still a thing. Like kids think growing up today that it's always been integrated, and that they see that Joe Holt, who really isn't, you know, he's in his 70s. And so really he's like, really not that old. And you think, really, that wasn't that long ago. And with the racial tension and everything going on now, he experienced that already. You know, his family received death threats, you know, and they were, you know, they were terrorized basically by, you know, so many different people in the community. And the kids, I'm talking about elementary, middle, and high school, and their parents are like, I never knew that this story even existed. So you're right, Alan, when they get to meet the person who was actually involved in this plight, in this struggle, it's amazing. Like they actually are so happy. And then what happens is they want him to come and speak at their schools. And so he gets to tell his story over and over again. And what that does is hopefully that creates a generation of compassionate and sensitive and progressive adults who know that racism is wrong, segregation is wrong, not liking someone because of the color of their skin is wrong, you know? So I like that, you know, he tells his story, and I really, really am, you know, going to work on him about getting this book done, you know, the adult version, and then I'll probably work with him on, you know, the younger one. But, you know, just to be able to have them see, you know, someone in their own community is just amazing.
I guess I think about agreeing with Alan. I've had speakers and I enjoy everybody that comes, but the two that has stood out to me is Angie Thomas, The Hate to Give, and that reached the community, and that was with the public library. So that was a major thing for us. And to have students interact, all levels, all genders, everybody, that was great. And then the one that continues to touch my heart is with John Lewis coming to visit. And he's sharing about how he began, sharecropper farmer, up to where he is now. And so I think that generated with the young men on campus to realize that you can start with a little and end up with much. And so I think that resonates with them. I may not have anything, I may be homeless now, but I can make it if I have the determination to do it. So those are the two speakers that really spoke to me different ways, but still on the topic of it's important to know yourself and to act upon things that you truly believe in.
It's really hard for me to choose because I just started doing the author chats in April. And even though I think, how many has it been now? I think it's over 30 authors that I've talked to. They've just all been so wonderful. It's really hard to choose. If I had to, I think it would be the Zoom to Facebook horror one where the Zoom did not connect to Facebook. So we ended up doing a very spontaneous Zoom meeting, and that was with Alexa Martin and Talia Hibbert. And it was memorable for many things. The scheduling was interesting because Talia is in the UK. So that was a lot of fun to schedule. And then just being able to see everyone's faces in the meeting, because usually when it's on Facebook Live, all we see are the comments, but being able to see everyone involved in the meeting, being able to see their faces, then being able to ask questions to the authors, it was just a really memorable, just wonderful experience. And at the end of every single one of the author chats, I always ask the authors what their favorite library memory is. And every time they make me cry because it's just so wonderful listening. It's usually stories about like the summer reading programs at their public library when they were kids, or the first time they got their library card, or a lot of them, it's the first time their kids got library cards. So it's a whole experience. And I just love them all.
That is awesome. You guys shared a lot today. And I like the idea of sharing your very first library story. And I like the idea, Judy, of you being able to collaborate so closely with the authors, and especially encouraging them to share their story. I think that sometimes it's easy for us to say, oh, you know, share your story, share your story. But, you know, you have to stay on top of them to, you know, keep them encouraged, keep them motivated. And it's always good to have someone who is doing that. Alan and Gloria, I am extremely proud to hear the things you guys are doing in academia with your programs. And it's given me some ideas to do at Pitt Community College. So thank you for your ideas that you shared today. Thank you all for what you shared with our participants. If there aren't any additional questions, this would conclude today's webinar. I'm excited to say that REMCO has a lot of amazing things coming soon near you, you guys. So if you're not following us on social media, please do. We're on Instagram, NC.REMCO. We are now on Facebook. I'm so excited for us. We're extending our virtual footprint. We just have some amazing things. If you guys are not members of REMCO and you would like to join, please do so by visiting the NCLA membership webpage. If you have any questions, please reach out to myself or Marcellus. Our emails can be found at the bottom of our REMCO page. If there's nothing else and you don't have any more questions, you guys, I will see you soon. And again, I would like to thank our panelists for participating in today's discussion. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have a great day. Thanks, Brittany and Marcellus. Nice meeting you, Gloria. See you,
Yeah.
Alan.
All right.
Bye, Judy.
Everyone.
Bye,
Thank you
Alan.
for joining us.
Bye,
It was
Gloria.
nice meeting
Bye,
all
Jessica.
of you.
Nice meeting you.
Yes,
Thank
good to
you.
meet you, Jessica.
You too.
Yeah, Jessica, nice to meet you.
Yes, stay safe out in Cali.
Yes.
Oh my
please.
gosh, thank you.
Yes, stay safe. We're praying for you guys.
Yes.
Thank you. Hopefully it'll rain. Then
Yes.
there'll be a mudslide. So it's like 2020.
I know.
Can't win.
You can't win.
And Brittany,
care,
if we're so
everyone.
close together, we might need to do some collaborating.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yes,
so,
It would be
so
very
we'll
nice.
talk.
we will.
Yeah. Okay.